Hello, everybody. My name is DJ Seith, and this is the CC Show.
I want everybody in this courtroom to smile because the judge is feeling good and we gonna rock a while.
Yo, peace to my mom. Anybody dealing with mental illness?
Brand new.
Everything it die a little bit.
Remix. Sound.
Peace to my mom. Anybody dealing with mental illness? Yo, peace to my mom. Yo, peace to my mom. So this bitch is keeping me alive like dialysis, chemotherapy, and a life so cancer crisis. Even past the crisis of a mental illness, that's so life when you're on 80 different types of prescription medication, looking like an admitted mental patient. Whether to die will sanity divides before you won't recognize your own family members. It's hard to keep a light aside, a soul dark. I think I'm blind, pulled apart in a polluted mind. I try to use love as my guide and stay positive and redefine what the fuck my logic is and think twice, maybe 3 times. Too many pills can wreck the stomach line. Too much anxiety to go aside and maybe exercise. Neglecting through your days of living in sobriety, trying to get a grip on reality. Yo, mental illness, schizophrenic, a multiple personality, living with a disability while slowly sliding into senility. Clouded imagery of fragmented memories. After years of addiction, you gotta take pills and get re-addicted. So when they switch the prescription, the body withdraws with the sickness and the side effects that should put a pharmacy out of business. It's alarming to me to think the system is in my best interest when all the doctor has to offer is poison in the form of medicine. It was said to have been temporary, and then some years pass, and you're up in the morning waiting for your blister packs. A vilified Seroquel, Clonazepam, losing yourself, trying to get your life back and regain faith and medicate while your brain decays day by day and perception slips away, seeing life from the bottom. A penny for your thoughts and a pill for every problem. A penny for your thoughts and a pill for every problem. A penny for your thoughts and a pill for every problem. A penny for your thoughts and a pill for every problem. A penny for your thoughts and a pill for every problem. A penny for your thoughts and a penny for your thoughts and a penny for your thought. A penny for your thoughts. A penny for your thought. Pill for every problem. Plenty of us are lost, so rest in peace to the fallen.
Souls destroyed by mental illness. I wouldn't wish upon my enemy this mental sickness. I've seen some good friends die and they ain't coming back. It's ruined a lot of good lives and threw some others off track. So now we'll battle every day so the dead can have a voice. You must stand for something whether or not you got a choice. Every day you gotta fight, so don't you ever fucking quit. And I mean it, man, I lost too many friends to this shit. I couldn't count all the funerals on just one hand. Man, I miss all my friends, you can't begin to understand. And every time one dies I cry because I'm only a man. Let's make a stand, don't let this illness win and get the upper hand. It's pharmaceuticals don't work, they only make it worse. It's also hypocritical, and then you find you're living in a curse. Then you're dead, you're driving down the road inside a hearse. Take a listen to what we say and please understand our words.
Mental illness, schizophrenic, a multiple personality, living with a disability while slowly sliding into senility. Clouded imagery of fragmented memories. My skills ill, my skills ill.
Like you know, but don't we claim it as mental.
Mental illness, schizophrenic, a multiple personality, living with a disability while slowly sliding into senility. Clouded imagery of fragmented memories. Mental illness, schizophrenic, a multiple personalities, living with a disability while slowly sliding into senility. Clouded imagery of fragmented memories.
We got an extra special show for you guys today. Thanks once again for tuning in. My name is DJ Seith. Today's episode is about police brutality. It's about systematic racism and inequality. Our special guests today include Mark Millington, and we got a special guest host today too, Skylee-Storm, returning to the show. Once again, special thanks to Sound Syndrome for their album and all the great music that they've been putting out. That was a special remix I put together just for this episode, and let's get the show started here. All right, you guys with us?
We're here.
Take over.
Hi, welcome. Today is August 8th, 2020, Saturday. Thanks for getting up and spending some time with us today. If you're tuning in on twitch.tv/ccandseith, you will have an uninterrupted feed, and you can catch us on Facebook Live right now. But if you're having any issues, switch over to twitch.tv/ccandseith for an uninterrupted feed. As I mentioned, it's Saturday today, and I've been so excited for today's show on systematic racism, socioeconomic disparity, and police brutality. This subject was by special request from Mark Millington, our special guest, and as Seith mentioned, we also have a special guest host, Skylee-Storm Hogan. Hi. So to start the show today, as usual, I'd like to start with land acknowledgement. I'm coming to you from Bobating, proud to be from here. I'm from downtown. We are the home of the Anishinaabeg people. There is also Cree, Métis, and all kinds of indigenous folks from Turtle Island that inhabit here. We are the home of the former Shingwak Residential School. So we have that history here. We're also located right in the middle of the Great Lakes, so we have a huge responsibility to protect the land and the waters. We're surrounded by Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, Missinaba Cree's a little further out, and we have a lot of diverse communities around us that deserve some respect. So respect to the truth, the lands, the peoples, the waters, and just want to spread good energy and healing out there for folks and our environment. So without further ado, I would like to have our guests introduce themselves. I will mention that today, Seith and I plan to be a little bit symbolic and supportive in our commentary. So we are hosting the space and allowing the space to be taken over, and I'm here to learn. So without further ado, I will pass the mic, and I did have Mark introducing himself first, and then I guess we'll let Skylee introduce themselves and kind of take over from there. Thank you. Mark?
Well, thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate the invite to come on the show. As you said, I'm Mark. Nothing super special about my credentials or anything like that. I'm just very passionate about fixing the situation that we're in as a country, as a people, as humanity. There's a lot of work that has been done, and it's been great to see the strides and the changes that have happened over the years. But as we've seen with protests happening around the world, there's a lot of work still to be done. And I think that the conversation is important to keep driving that conversation forward so that people can learn exactly how they can help, what they can do, and how they can really combat this on a systematic and personal level. So that's what I'm here for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So my name is Skylee-Storm Hogan. I'm coming at you from Ottawa, which is the traditional territory of the Algonquin the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. I went to university in Sault Ste. Marie, Bawatang, for 4 years, where I completed a BA in law and justice, and my major research paper was actually on the policing and over-incarceration of Indigenous bodies. I've since completed a master's degree in history, specifically looking at public history, but also my main interests include Indigenous and Crown relations and legislation history in regards to policing Indigenous people. My main reasons for pursuing that was because my father was actually over-incarcerated as an Indigenous person for over 25 years. So, I mean, to me, it was a very personal thing that I go for that and that I talk about it and that I advocate for it, just because it's something that directly not only impacted my family, but it impacted my access to culture and my access to who I was as a Haudenosaunee, Ankwaone, Ganea, Gagaha person. So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of talking about this, talking about my paper, that I originally was kind of laughed out of class for because my suggestions back in 2018 were a little bit out of the realm of people's imaginations. So I'm really looking forward to breaking this down with you today, Mark.
We can't hear you, Mark.
There we go. Sorry about
That's
that. I'm definitely looking forward to having this conversation as well. I guess, well, you know what? You should probably lead, mainly because you have a little more expertise in the detailed areas. I'm also here, I guess, more to learn than to input. I'm if that makes sense.
I mean, like, as much as I appreciate that sentiment, I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm like an expert in any way, just because, I mean, formal education is really only accessible by certain people, and I was only able to access it by going into an extreme amount of debt. So, I mean, it's definitely like lived experience is just as valid as education, in my opinion. So feel free at all, like, if like you hop in, like I don't think that it's less valid than anything else, just to clarify that.
That's 100% fair. I'm saying from my point of view, seeing someone that has actually poured that much time and effort into understanding your own culture, into understanding why things are the way they are, and like you said, you got laughed out of class for something that nowadays people are looking at going, well, maybe that's not so crazy anymore, right? Maybe this idea isn't so crazy anymore. I mean, I think it's funny, we talk about things like abolish the police and all sorts of, there's tons of catchphrases and buzzwords going around right now, and a lot of people have no idea what they mean to different people. The fact that they can mean different things to different people, like to me, abolish the police doesn't mean we get rid of police altogether. To me, that's not what it means, and that's not what it should mean. They definitely serve a purpose, I think, and we'll probably end up getting into that. I just think that they've got too much on their plates, and we need to separate and parcel out tasks to the correct people to handle different situations. They're meant to track down crime. Let them do that. That's what they're there for. You know what I mean? So I'm sure we'll get into all of that, though.
For sure. So just like in the context of Canadian police, just to kind of start it off, the Northwest Mounted Police was our like first continent, like our first like countrywide policing service, and they were essentially created to clear the West for settlement. So directly police were really created in this country to police poor folk, and to police Indigenous folk, and to police Black and Brown folks, because the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant settlers of mainly Ontario and Quebec were the key concern. Quebec did have some issues in regards to they were also heavily policed because the French were discriminated against, but in today's context, I don't really think that's super relevant. So when kind of like breaking down what exactly a criminalized behavior is, we have to look at why that behavior is criminalized. So a main starting point for me was, why do we criminalize certain behaviors? Why do we pay more attention to people who do certain types of crimes versus other people who do other types of crimes? So, somebody could steal millions of dollars from a company and get time in a minimum security prison, whereas someone else, gets caught selling drugs and then they end up doing 25, 30 years in a maximum security prison. It's just very disproportionate, especially in sentencing. And I feel as though, too, that there's a lot of misconception that goes around about how Indigenous folks are sentenced and how they serve time in Canada. Because what I've heard from a lot of people is that these healing lodges let murderers get out early. They let people not serve their time the right way. They give people breaks. That there's some type of principle in sentencing that gives Indigenous people less time than others, which is just simply not true. And how do I know this? Well, the Government of Canada actually put out a recent report. So this was done January 21st, 2020. And it's actually shown that since the year 2000, the sentencing for this has increased it's grown nearly 44%. So the population of Indigenous folks already was high in the year 2000, but now it's grown by 44%. Where non-Indigenous inmates, it's actually decreased by 13.5, almost 14%. So we're actually seeing more and more Indigenous people being incarcerated in Canada and less of literally everyone else. Which is a huge problem because we're 5% of the entire country's population, but we make up more than half of the prison's population here in Canada.
Those stats are staggering, and it's frustrating because a lot of people don't understand that it's all intertwined. You're dealing with the reasoning behind the sentencing that you're looking at. It's very simple. It continues driving the wedge between classes. It continues separating lower class from upper class. It continues driving that wedge and creating that disparity so that the people who are on the bottom can continue to stay on the bottom. And when you're dealing with something like socioeconomic disparity, you're looking at it, and you look at it on a countrywide level. You're looking at specific areas that are targeted, specific people that are targeted and placed within those areas. People don't live in housing because they want to live in housing. They live in housing because they have no other choice. And when you put people in that situation where they're forced to live somewhere simply because that's what they can afford, there's no other recourse. When you start jailing those people or over-policing those people, you're going to find crime in that area, right? So all of these things are linked. When you have people, you put them in jail, and then you hold them there for a long time, which creates a disparity of wealth for them because you're not making any money when you're in jail, obviously. And then when you finally do let these people out, you're placing them into halfway houses or homes or shelters or whatnot, where they still don't have any access to creating any type of wealth to help pull themselves out of that situation. And then on top of that, now they're in these situations and you're still forcing them to pay rent. You're still forcing them to try and become a productive member of society. But now these are people who are felons, so nobody wants to hire them. So you've now created this cycle where a person who will take your average 18 to 20-year-old Black, Native, any color boy off the street, okay, who goes and decides to do something dumb and he wants to sell some weed just to get by. You know what I mean? That's what he's doing just to get by. And that boy gets picked up, he gets put into the system. They decide to give him a nice heavy sentence. They put him in jail for 10, 15 years of his life. Cool. He gets out when he's 30. He's now a grown man, but he has no skills because he missed out on school. He has no access to a job because he's now a felon. And where do you expect him to go? What do you expect him to do? There's no help, there's no support for these people. That's where I think the biggest change in our system needs to happen. There needs to be a change within our education system to help give people the step up that they need to get proper jobs, so that they're not stuck within the situations that they're stuck in. And I think that there needs to be proper social support for people, whether it be mental support, whether it be addiction support, whether it be proper social support. I'm not a huge proponent of, say, having I don't know how that all factors in, and I'd have to do more research myself in countries that do have their own universal income to see if that would make a change. But I think that our criminal system is definitely hardwired to target people of a lower socioeconomic bracket. And that's just the be all and the end all of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I know from my personal experience that the sentencing was really sketchy. There was an instance where it was like, we don't necessarily have proof that you have done this, but based on your prior records, you more than likely had something to do with it. And therefore now you're going to lose over 20 years of your life, which is absolutely horrifying. Like, you know, you have a new infant daughter, you have a life, and then you lose that life. And then when you get out, it's like the world has changed substantially since the late 90s. I mean, it's staggering. So you have to learn how to actually navigate yourself in that world. You have to put up with stigma. You have to live in a halfway house where other people maybe they don't have your best interests at heart. They want to try to get you back into that place. You know, you can't sleep through a full night because for the last however many years, you've been kind of sleeping with one eye open. You don't accept people being nice to you just out of the goodness of their hearts because you always feel like there's a trade-off or they want something from you. It makes you inherently suspicious of other people. Institutionalization does something to your brain. It rewires your brain. And we saw that with residential schools, and we can see that with the child welfare system. We see them in group homes. We see it in prisons. It's a way that they group you together. They put you in adversarial positions against each other. They inherently make you more angry, more violent, more everything. It's a mental conditioning that doesn't really go away after you leave. And, you know, I've seen a lot of good in my community with the Indigenous parole officer system. So I actually have cousins who work in that system, who work with dangerous reoffenders, who work with just people who do petty crime reoffense. And, you know, they try to reintegrate them into some type of life, and it can be extremely hard just because of the own mental roadblocks that you have. And, you know, you're told for so long that you don't deserve something or you don't deserve a certain type of life. It's really hard for you to get the confidence, the energy, and the strength to go out and get it. And it makes you scared. And I think that that's something, too, that we haven't really addressed is, you know, when I see certain types of people or I see a certain type of lifestyle, I inherently know that that's just not for me. And it really shouldn't be that way, but it is. Mm-hmm. And I think it's all intertwined with that system at the same time.
100%. 100%. Our society has... It's such a touchy topic because a lot of people get very upset and offended when you mention anything about white superiority, white privilege, anything like that. You immediately trigger people because the immediate response is, I don't have a privilege. There's no privilege to being. And I try to get across to people, it's not about what you have, it's about what you don't have to deal with. You know, you don't have to deal with certain things simply based on the color of your skin. There's certain conversations you are never going to have with your kids There are certain places that you are never going to feel barred access to. You will never experience these things on the same level or degree as we do. Do white people experience poverty? 100%. Do white people experience injustice at the hands of the police? I'm very, very, very certain I've watched it with my own eyes. But do they experience it to the level of, say, Native people in Canada or Black people in America? Not even close. It's not even in the same ballpark. It's not even in the same region. We're not even playing in the same arena. It's not the same at all. And until people are able to understand that that goes hand in hand with white superiority, goes in hand with diminishing the feeling of, like you said, there's a lot of things that Black people and Native people will look at and say, I don't have access to that. That's not a life for me. That's not something that I'm able to be or aspire to. And it's hardwired into our society via movies. It's hardwired into our society via commercials, TV, via all kinds of advertising. Everything is made to glorify a certain type of person and dehumanize another. And it's always been that way. And it's sad to say that I don't feel like that's something that's going to change very easily. It's not something that's going to happen very easily. So it's tough. It's where you're coming from and what you're talking about is very tough, because it's hard to get people to realize that when you place emphasis in the wrong places, you're definitely dehumanizing another set of people and causing them the inability to see their worth. Do you know what I mean? Putting Black and Indigenous people through the police system and then bringing them out of that police system with no support. You're basically telling them, okay, you've served your crime, but you're still worth nothing. Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not saying that people shouldn't be incarcerated for crimes that they commit or for doing wrong. That's what the legal system is here for. But disproportionately sentencing people and keeping them away from their families, keeping them away from the positive influences that could possibly help them change their lives. Like, I'm confident that in your case, your father went when you were very young, correct?
Yeah.
I'm confident in my mind, and only based on the fact that I've seen it with other people, I'm confident in my mind that had the judge and the system been a little bit more lenient on him and let him out early and let him be a part of your life, having his family and people there to support him, would probably have made a world of difference in his rehabilitation, in his ability to cognitively decide, okay, this life isn't for me, this is the life that I have, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. I think that people like to point out stats, like in America, they like to point out that there's something like 62% of single mothers out there, but they fail to point out that like 48% of those mothers who are single mothers have husbands or significant others that are locked up in the jail system. It's not just men who are just walking away from their family. It's men who are being taken away from their family. It's ridiculous, the numbers. And you can't tell me that those two aren't correlated. And you can't tell me that, oh, these are just lazy Black bums who are walking away from their kids. No, they're being taken away from their kids, and they're being held away from their kids for disproportionately long amounts of time. And then what? When you let them out, you're automatically looking at them, trying to put them back in the system. The goal isn't to reintegrate them into society anymore. The goal is just to let them out, let them screw up, and put them back in the system. And that's not a way to live. That's not helpful to anyone.
Absolutely. And, that's the biggest difference that I've noticed in the past year since he has been like living outside of the institution, is the fact that like family, being close to our First Nation, culture, his experience mentoring younger offenders, like things like that have really brought him a lot closer to who he should have been. And I mean, like, our relationship isn't perfect, obviously. My family had a lot of animosity, simply because of the stigma that comes along with being in that situation. I mean, I was essentially raised not to really talk about where I was from, and it's just like, you know, I feel different when I am being proud of my indigeneity and walking around in public and wearing ceremonial stuff, or like wearing Indigenous jewelry, or just like being unapologetically Indigenous, rather than like, you know, when I'm not, because like, I mean, I'm not visible. It's not like, you know, people would automatically be like, oh, you're Indigenous. Like, I mean, it doesn't work that way. I often get perceived as white, right? So like, I mean, and half of me is like, my mom's family is Irish. I mean, like they're super white. They're from Newfoundland. They're really nice people. But at the same time, like, you know, I grew up being told like not to talk about it because they didn't want me to get discriminated against. So actively, like, you know, you had to have that conversation with your child being like, hey, there are people who are not going to like you because of who your ancestors are, or where you're from, or what you are. And like, you know, and when teachers used to give me a hard time in school, they used to single me out because they knew the situation. And they knew that I had a single parent, and it was probably because there's no father figure in my life. And then when they figure out like other things, it's like, you know, I had a very hard time in elementary school. I had a teacher in grade 8 who thought that I was a huge problem, tried to put me into locally developed programs in grade 9, which is essentially below college, university, or trade. So I would essentially just become a service worker, which is totally fine. But at the same time, it's like, maybe I wasn't doing good in school because the teacher herself was bullying me because of where I'm from, or what she perceived as my station in life. And, you know, I got to grade 9 and they ended up jumping me 2 levels because I actually knew what I was doing. I was actually smart, and, you know, I was being set at a certain level because of what their perception was of where I came from. And it wasn't just the teacher. It's like, I mean, when that teacher like full on outed me as Indigenous in the entire class, and the fact that I was living in a 1-room apartment with my mother in Mississauga, you know, it automatically made other people go, well, like, you really think you can go to university? Like, you're just not from that. And, you know, it took like just one teacher in high school that actually believed in me and gave me that confidence to pursue that actually changed everything. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have done anything, to be totally real. I probably would have just stayed working at restaurants and just like kept trudging away. And I mean, it hasn't made a huge difference in my life. Like, I do what I love, and I'm a historical researcher full time, which is like something that, like, you know, I didn't think I could do, but I'm still living in 1 room in a city where like the houses next to me are selling for $1.5 million, and I'm never going to realistically attain anything. But, you know, it's not even having the self-confidence to do what you actually wanted to do because of the perception of what you come from and what your value is as a human being. It took me a long time to be completely comfortable with my indigeneity and actually be confident in saying that, like, yeah, like, I am Haudenosaunee, like, I am Mohawk, like, I am that person. Like, it took me a long time to feel confident in that, because like I had my family trying to protect me, being like, you know, you're not really that, like, you turned out this way, so like just don't talk about it. And then I had like other people in school being like, that's a bad thing, your people are bad, like other kids just being like, because I guess like another thing I found out too from tutoring folks at Algoma was that as soon as they come here with their student visas or they come here to immigrate, people at the offices tell them to avoid us because apparently we're all scammers and crooks. We're all addicted to drugs. So like, I mean, there was a huge stigma against me whenever that was something that was actually put out. They assumed I had a learning disability because we all do. So like, there's just things like little microaggression things as a chubby kid. And that's just because we all are, you know, just like stuff like that. And it really hurts your confidence. And sure, I lashed out. I had an authoritative opposition disorder. It took me a long time to be like okay with somebody telling me what to do, because I just had an attitude where I was pissed off. I was just fucking angry all the time. So like, yeah, I was just automatically aggressive from step one, like from the get-go. Because I was always waiting for a fight, or I was always waiting to be put down. So like, I can't imagine too, like even just as an adult, like not getting over that. Because like it took me a lot of work to get over that and to be a bit more pleasant in my day-to-day life. I know that my dad didn't have that advantage, so like automatically he was already like, he was at a certain level, and police don't like that.
They definitely do not like that at all. I can empathize because I understand where you're coming from, and it's interesting. You mentioned that you have the ability to kind of camouflage because you're part white. You have the ability to camouflage, and then you look at someone like me, and I don't get that. I don't get that luxury, but I do get that luxury in one way, and it came in the form of trying to apply for a job here. There was a call center in town, and I tried to apply for a job here, and you can all hear me, and you all hear exactly how I talk, and this has been a bone of contention my entire life. I have always been told that I'm not actually black, simply because I don't cuss all the time. I don't talk with colloquials all the time. I'm not big on slang. It's just not my thing. I've always been a proper English person. I don't know why. It's always been that way with me. And so, and even that in and of itself, that microaggression drives me insane because, you know, proper English is only reserved for white folk, right? That's just the way that goes. But I digress. So I went and I applied for this job, and it was, you call in and you talk to the person and they say, okay, hey, who are you, da-da-da-da-da, and they talk to you on the phone, and then they say, okay, we'll give you an interview in person if we like how you talk on the phone. So my name, it's Mark Millington. It's an English last name. I definitely 100% sound white on the phone. So totally got through the interview process, totally fine. Went and I sat down in this office to wait for my interview with like 7 or 8 other people. And this was when I had first moved to this town. This is when I first moved to Sault Ste. Marie. So we're talking like 16 years ago, something like that. So I'm sitting there in this office, and one guy is sitting beside me, tattooed up, and he's talking with me, and me and him are having a great old time. Just, you know, he's like, oh, where are you from, and what makes you come to the city? And we're totally having a great conversation while the rest of the people are all going in and out and getting their interviews. And I end up being the last person in the room, and the woman comes out, looks right at me, looks around the room, and starts to walk away. And I'm like, I'm here for an interview. And she's like, oh, I was looking for Mark Millington. And I'm like, I am Mark Millington. And she just sort of like, her jaw hit the floor. Like, there's no way this is the person I was talking to on the phone. And I get in there, and suddenly it's, do you have a criminal history? And where are you from? And I'm like, these are not exactly normal interview questions, but we'll play along because I would really like to have a job. I apply at the same place. I'm not going to name any names because I'm not in the game of shaming people, but I applied at that place 3 separate times, and every single time I applied with 3 different recruiters, 3 different interviewers, and every single time reached the exact same point. I walked into the office, I sat down for that interview, and they looked at me like I shouldn't have been there. And it's wild to me that when you have that ability to camouflage, it's nice in some ways, but it really doesn't help me any. It really, really doesn't help me any. And it's super frustrating. It's super frustrating to have people look at me and grade my blackness based on the stereotypes. They tell me that I'm not black enough because I don't like this kind of music, or I don't do this kind of activity. Like, because I'm not sitting in my basement or sitting with a bunch of boys in my house playing NBA 2K and smoking a bunch of weed, I'm suddenly not black enough, right? Like my card gets revoked because I'm not doing the stereotypical things, when in actuality, I really don't want to do the stereotypical things. I would like to break those molds and show people that there are varying shades of blackness. There are varying degrees of blackness. You don't necessarily have to be like fresh off the boat from Africa black in order to be considered black. I don't need to dress in traditional Nigerian gear to be considered black. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a thing. So I kind of envy people like you who kind of have that ability to camouflage when you want to and take a break and not have to deal with it in a way. Do you know what I mean? It's all still there. It's all still compartmentalized within you. And I understand that. So I'm not taking away from your experience at all. I'm not saying that you are any less Native, but the ability to camouflage when you're out in society and not have to deal with that stigma every once in a while, it can't be beat sometimes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like, honestly, getting interviews and jobs has been hard for me because my name is Skylee-Storm. It's hyphenated. People don't know what that is. I get weird questions all the time about who my parents were, if they were hippies, like what? And it's just like, no, like my mom did come up with that name, but like it's based off of names that like were suggested when I was conceived, like stuff like that. Like it is traditional in some ways, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like I deal with a lot because there are different degrees of nativeness, different degrees of Indianness. Like, you know, like I technically have status, but then there are people who are darker than me who don't. There are people, yeah, exactly, Cece. So like, I mean, I deal with folks, you know, who are from Métis organizations, who are friends of mine, who like applied to get a membership card with a number on it, where I have to explain to them my number. Every digit represents a generation of my family, a number that they were assigned instead of a name. So if you look back like 4 digits, that's my grandfather. You look back 6 digits, that's my great-grandfather. Like, we didn't get to just choose to have that. It wasn't like something that like we were like, oh, I want to be a part of this fun club. Like, no. Like, it's something that's assigned to you at birth. Like, you don't get a choice. Like, it's something hard to describe to people. And then the shitty thing about camouflage is that other white people confess to you the most disgusting views, the worst shit. Like, they come up and say to you, like, stuff about other folks or, like, stuff about Indigenous folks on the street, especially here in Ottawa, that actually really upsets me because it's just like, you know, I've had members of my dad's family who were street people. And it's just like, you know, I didn't know them personally, but I've had the stories given to me and I've seen their photos and I know who they are. And I know that, like, my grandfather had those moments as well. And it's just like, it's incredibly sad. And to have other white people come up to me and be like, haha, guess what? And like say something awful and gross. And then I just sit there and I'm like, actually, no, I'm going to tell you right now why that is a big problem with me. Like, you can't just come up to me and disclose that bullshit because I don't like it. And, you know, and then I get kind of looked at as like, oh, you're sensitive. And it's like, really sensitive. And, you know, it sucks too being in camouflage because, like, sometimes, you know, like, I'm saying I'm looking for a new place and people say, what are you buying? And I'm like, fucking nothing. I'm looking to rent. And then people look at you like, well, why are you paying someone else's mortgage? And it's like, well, I don't have the privilege of having like $40,000 lying around to put down on a house that I can't afford, that'll take me 50 years to pay off. Like, I just don't have that. And I'm thankful for at times, I know, like, if there's going to be violence on the street or something, I know it's not going to be directed at me because of the way that I look, and that's like a certain degree of safety. But as soon as my loudmouth intervenes in something, I know that I'm in danger. And it's happened a few times here, like, because Ottawa can be really nasty because we share a border with Quebec. My First Nations in Quebec, they aren't the best with us. They don't like us. And I mean, it's got layers to it. And I 100% know what you mean, because I've had friends who are quite dark, who also speak very white on the phone and who have white names, like, you know, like Chris or Jonathan. And it's just like, you know, like, people don't know what they are until they get there. And it's a weird thing, but it's all like in relation to whiteness.
It
And
always is.
Like, and it's not necessarily like what you said. It's like, I'm not calling out people who are white or like whatever, because it's just like, I get it. My mom's side of the family's from Newfoundland, and they don't get treated very nicely in Toronto. Like, people make fun of their accent. People always ask them where they're from. Like, just bullshit like that. Like, so I mean, it does exist on both sides. They're not rich people. They've had to do factory work their whole lives, and it's negatively it's negatively affected their health and like all that other stuff. But I mean, nobody questions their right to be here. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas, like, I have friends like Bushra, who was supposed to attend this conversation today, when we were in the Sioux during Canada 150, and her and I were speaking up against a lot of those narratives, people were telling her to go back where she came from. And she went to elementary school and high school in Mississauga just the same as I did. So, I mean, it's absolute garbage. Like, it's all in relation to the standard, you know what I mean? And it's like every time I've ever felt self-conscious, or I felt like I've looked in the mirror and felt disgust, it's always been in relation to one standard of what I feel I should look like or what I should be doing. And yeah, it's awful. I don't like it, but I also like sometimes it is nice to not automatically have that given to me. I mean,
I can see exactly. I never even really thought of it. I didn't think of it from that aspect. So for that, I apologize, because
you don't need to apologize. Like, I honestly don't face much nonsense in my life purely because of what I look like. So I mean, you don't need to apologize.
It's wild though. You have to absorb both sides of it, and I think that's really key, because I find that it's within our own race that you'll find the worst ugliness. Like, I've experienced different things at the hands of white folk that we won't even discuss or get into right at this point. But the worst kinds of discrimination that I've faced haven't been, well, the kinds that have affected me the most, that have affected who I feel like and what I felt like as a person, where I felt my value was as a person, those came from my own race. Having people of my own race look at me and say, you're not black enough. But then going to school and not being able to fit in with the white kids. Like, high school was hard. It was, my first year of high school was absolutely one of the hardest years of my life. I went from living in Rexdale, which is a predominantly black area. It's a poor area. Anybody who's from Toronto knows the area well. Rexdale it's what it is, okay? It's what it is. And I grew up there, and my mom decided that when we got to high school, when I was going to high school and middle school, she wanted to get me out of that area. So we moved away, and I ended up being able to go to one of the biggest high schools in Toronto. And so when I first got to that school, it was wild, because it was the first time I had gotten a really good cross-section of students. Like, we had students of all nationalities and stuff there. But it was also the first time that I really didn't feel like I was black. Like, I had gotten it a lot as a kid, but race didn't play such a big issue until like middle school and high school. It didn't really factor in. That was when people started sort of separating into their cliques. And when I got to high school, there were a lot of black people in my high school. But I wasn't big into sports. I wasn't big into, like, I didn't play basketball. I wasn't into rap music at the time. Like, I wasn't into any of the stereotypical black things. So I didn't fit in with any of the black kids. Did not fit in. And they didn't let me in the group, so to speak. But I was black, so I didn't fit in with the white kids. So I was just, my first year of high school was hard, simply because of that. It wasn't until I kind of had that mental epiphany that everybody goes through at some point in their life, where you decide, fuck it, I'm going to be who I am, and everybody else can piss off. Once I hit that zone and I hit that stride, it was a lot easier for me because I didn't care. I was me. I was unapologetically me. I listened to my soca music. I listened to rap. I listened to Alanis Morissette. I didn't care what I wanted to listen to or what I wanted to do. I was into both magic cards and basketball. I was unapologetically me. I just went with what I liked and did what I liked, and that was the be all and the end all. And I went with it to see where it would take me. Do you know what I mean? But it's always been a thing in my life. Whenever I faced any type of discrimination when it has to deal with my blackness, most of that has come from my own race. And I think that that's something that needs to be unpacked within the Native population. There's a lot of people who have varying opinions, and like you said, people look at you and say you have a certain amount of nativeness to you, or maybe you don't look native enough, or maybe you don't have enough native blood in you to be considered native. And it's the same thing within the black community. They look at us and they're like, oh, I get the whole you're an Uncle Tom or you're a Carlton because you fit in with the white folk and you talk with the white folk real good. And it's, guys, that's not what it's about. Being black is being black. I would still, if me and the most thuggish guy living in Detroit or living in Chicago were both stopped by the same cop, we both have the same damn chance of getting home that night. Doesn't matter. My skin is just as black as yours. I'm going to be treated just exactly the same, regardless of how I speak or how I handle the situation. We both are in exactly the same boat. So I think that that's one of my main focuses when everybody starts talking about race and stuff. I'm trying to unpack my own racial trauma as it deals with my own race. I'm trying not to put a lot of the onus on what white people have done or white people are doing, or like a lot of people are still like, slavery did this or this did that. And I'm like, yeah, those things definitely played a part in how we got to the situation that we're at today. 100%, no argument there. But how we deal with it and how we move forward as a people is also just as important. We can't ask the gatekeepers, the people who have the power, we can't ask them to help us with something when they look at us as people who aren't helping themselves, right? With people who aren't serving their own interests. So, and that's not a conversation a lot of people within my race are ready to have. They're just not ready to have that conversation. They're too wrapped in their own pain. They're too wrapped in their own trauma to really connect with what's holding us back, with what's really at stake and what's really holding us back in this situation. And so I've had a hard time when it comes to talking with my own race about this. And I've had a harder time talking to my own race than I have talking to white people, to be 100% honest. Lately, I've had more confrontation talking to people of color about this issue of racism and police brutality and socioeconomic disparity and education disparity. I have a hard time talking with my own race because they're just not ready to accept that there are certain things that we as a race do to ourselves that hold us back. And we need to address those issues too. It needs to be a cohesive effort on all sides of the issue. We can't ask one person to help us with something if we're not helping ourselves. That's just my strong belief.
For sure. I mean, I've had those little like aggressions and stuff like that as well. Like, doing grassroots work, you always have the people who make the digs about having a university education, like constantly. They make the digs at you, like how sometimes like you've betrayed your race because you got an education. Meanwhile, it's just because I really like history, and the only way to compete with white historians is to have a degree, or to be taken seriously, or with any authority at all, is to have a degree, which literally means nothing. Because I've heard the stupidest things come out of the mouths of people with degrees. But I've also too been in, I've taken like Indigenous studies at Algoma, and I've had like a woman teacher, like a TA. I'm not going to name who it is because this dude's way too small. And she was going to go pursue her master's. She's Métis. I mean, she looks just like me, maybe even a little whiter. And basically I was having a conversation with another student, like just about my community or whatever. And she stops and she goes, oh, maybe Skylie's an Anishinaabe after all. And it's just like, I'm like classified by the government as an Indian, which I don't even like that word, but like, it's just like, why do you feel the need to say that? Like, does it legitimize you in some way? Like, I don't understand what putting me down has to do with anything here. And it's just like, you know, in Bawatang, it's a gathering place. It's like people from all over, everywhere used to go there to connect and share and learn. And it's just like, what is this? But it definitely, like, you know, online, I found the online culture right now to be extremely volatile. So I just don't see much anymore because, to be honest, I'd rather do actual actions than just glory post online about how, like, whatever I am, I don't really care. I found like doing actions or like meeting with people and like talking and doing stuff like this is much more meaningful than sharing stuff online and complaining about things out in the air without actually like having anything to do with it. And to be honest, it's like I support other people from my community who are like actively advocating, you know, like about what they're doing. But yeah, it's just like even talking about like stuff in the Sioux where, you know, I've been in stores with like on my own and it's been fine. And like, I think Cece and I have been to Walmart a couple times and then like we noticed we've been followed or like just like little things, just small little things, especially in Sault Ste. Marie that have been particularly difficult. But yeah, like I'm really looking forward into the podcast kind of breaking down like some of the stories about the Sioux. Talking about police in general, because I actually have some real golden tidbits since I've been here in Ottawa about people in policing or police foundations have said to me, not knowing that I'm Indigenous and just some stuff like that. So I feel like talking about that is going to be really cool in the next segment.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for the YLC After Show podcast. Thank you for hosting that after this. So that's on Zoom and our viewers can actually log on with us. So we're hoping some folks watching will come and join us for the podcast recording. The Zoom number, if you have a pen, it's also on the poster on the CC Show Facebook, but the Zoom number is the meeting ID 609-713-5394. And the meeting password is ccandseith, all one word, lowercase. So we hope to join you there. We'll be recording our conversation further, digging a little deeper, and then we'll be putting it out on a Young Leaders Circle podcast. Also, shout out to YLC for being partners with the CC Show. Is there any final thoughts before we headed over to Seith and the outro music? Thank you so much, by the way.
I just wanted to thank you for having us. I definitely had a great time just breaking down where we're at and sharing some stories. It's nice to know that we have a big circle of support when it comes to this issue. And I think that it's important that everybody knows that this issue has been around for a long time. And I know a lot of people haven't felt comfortable in speaking up, but now is the time where people need to know that they are supported, that their opinion is respected, that it is valid, that you are not sensitive for feeling a certain way or for thinking that things need to change. It's important that everybody feels like they have that voice and that everybody knows that their voice and their concerns are valid. So I'm happy that we are creating a space for people to do that in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll send her over to Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys so much for having this conversation today and kind of gathering together. This was really, really good, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this. And I'm super excited for the after show too, to be able to talk with everybody. So let me get this going here. All right. Once again, thank you very much to Skylee-Storm Hogan for co-hosting, or for guest hosting, I guess, and to Mark Millington for joining in the conversation as a special guest. So, without further ado, let's get this going here.
Miigwech.
So for everybody tuning in today, like I said, we got an after show happening in about, say, 10 minutes or so. We will be back in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the CC Show, so make sure to check us out on Facebook. It's facebook.com/ccandseith. You can join us on twitch.tv/ccandseith for future episodes. We also have a YouTube channel. If you search for the CC Show featuring sounds by DJ Seith, you'll find it there. It's got all the past episodes if you want to catch up on them. And yeah, let's get into the mix.
Check out this. 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 You better check out this. Check out this. Check out this. Check out this. You better check out this. We got the people checking us out. Put the record out so you know we wrecking them now. Yeah, without a doubt, we the ones rocking the house. Y'all ain't rocking now, so you know we putting them out. Get up off the couch or get up off the chair. Throw your hands in the air like you don't care. When you party with a debonair, feel more chill, master of the affair. And Joe Bombay, superpower DJ. Yes, I made him in a second with the records he play. See the way he makes turntables obey. Just a man with a very quick flick of the hand. And I rock the mic on the off of the stand. Check out this. Check out this. Check out this. You better check out this. Check out this. Check out this. Check out this. You better check out this. We got the people checking us out. Put the record out so you know we wrecking them now. Yeah, without a doubt, we the people checking us out. Put the record out so you know we wrecking them now. Yeah, without a doubt, we the ones rocking the house. Y'all ain't rocking now, so you know we putting them out. Get up off the couch, all the people checking us out. Put the record out so you know we wrecking them now. Yeah, without a doubt, we the ones rocking the house. Y'all ain't rocking now, so you know we putting them out. Get up off the couch, or get up off the chair, throw your hands in the air. You don't care when you party with a air. Feel chill, love, fair. And Joe Bass, superpower DJ. Yes, I made him in a second with the records he play. See the way he makes turntables obey, man, very flick hand. And I run out the mic on the off of the stand. Don't ask the people to dance, I demand. Like I folded my arms and I said Shazam. Now I gotta meet palm of my hand. And if you like another rapper, I ain't giving a damn. You better check out this, 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 check out this. Check out this, 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 you check out this, check out this, check out this, check out this, check out this. Yeah. Check out this, like I gave it to the cashier. Little mommy was flirting, gave it to the cashier. Rapidly stuck in the fast gear. This time your last year. It's current events, currency is sense, but I'm here to make dollars. The current will make you holler out behind your kite. On a stormy night, spark the mic. My elocution will cause electrocution like electric boogie. Kids who pop lock, Joe PMC is Coca-Cola and Pop Rocks. To our adversaries, I don't get carried away because you can get carried away on a stretcher. Anytime I use rhymes to etch ya, sketch ya. Thoughts I conjured up treacherously. Trust me, I'm not so rusty. You listen to my rhymes like damn, he must be the Messiah, the one we require. The Messiah, the one we require. The Messiah, the one we require. The Messiah, the one we require to follow through the rain, the muck, the mire. Fuck it, see, you call me sire. I won't stop it until the man with the cycles at my doorstep, knocking like he came for my life. On the tree of rap, I call my name knife. Now I'm permanently best MC. Other turn them in affirmatively, burning it down to the foundation. Now you're facing the amazing film with Chill and Joe on collaboration. Everybody say they rock, but don't check out that. When you can check out what, you better check out this. Check out this. Check out this. You know, check out this. This, you know, check out this. You know, check out this. So check out this. 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 Who else you checking out. Besides us, make a move, even people with arthritis. Yes, a young MC and get a move, the bus experience the sound. Come on and groove with us. This bomb like Africa, Islam, but it's all peaceful knowledge and wisdom, understanding, mentality expanding till the rappers on the top get dropped to crash landings. Putting on wax will soon be universal when we rock at the Axis Moon D. Yeah, PMC, that's me, be intelligent, say I'm the Bel Esprit. And on the mix, Joe Run, level-ish, be it on the 33 and the 3rd of the 7-inch, bring it back, then let it go, because this is the way, the 7-inch, bring it back, then let it go, because this is the way, bring it back, then let it go, because bring it back, then let it go, bring it back, then let it go, because bring it back, then let it go, bring it back, then let it go, because bring it back, then let it bring it back, then let it back, then bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, let it because this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, we rock the show on me cause I know you know the music that there is no cure, the kind of source and the checking for. You better check out this, 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 you better check out this, check out this.